Thank you, Alex. Um, Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate you giving up your evening tonight. Just some quick introductions. My name is Kath Bennett. I'm the Safeguarding Case Manager here at the RFU, and I oversee the reactive part of safeguarding and also the case officers at the RFU. And with us tonight, we have Viv.
Hi, thanks, Kath. Hi, everyone. Lovely to see so many of you on this evening. Thanks for giving up your time. I'm Viv Rimmer. I'm head of safeguarding for the RFU. Really pleased to be here.
So the RFU recognise that safeguarding can be particularly challenging at times. So the webinars that we've produced over the months, including DBS, getting ready for the season, and touring and overnight stays, and this webinar supports you in your role and supplements information already available, and it should all be considered together. It's important that this webinar is in relation to our requirements in rugby union and to support you in responding to and reporting on to us safeguarding concerns. It is particular to rugby union, and we will be talking about our processes. We acknowledge that many of you are already involved in safeguarding, whether that be your employment or in other sectors. We recognise that some of you are police officers, social workers, or teachers. It really is important that we recognise your skill set, and your skill set is invaluable to supporting safeguarding in your club. But we still must emphasise that our processes must be abided by. As Alex has said, there will be some polls, there'll be some quizzes during the webinar and an opportunity to answer questions. And we hope that we can cover most of the questions. If not, we will be providing a Q&A document after this webinar in the next few days. So our first poll this evening is to see who is on the call tonight. So Alex, over to you.
So that poll should be with you now. So if you could let us know, what is your primary role in rugby union? Is it that club safeguarding officer? Is it a CB safeguarding officer, constituent body like North Midlands Rugby Football Union or Yorkshire Rugby Football Union? Is it a coach, team manager, first aider, a committee member or other or parent? Please let us know that. So like I say, there'll be a few polls this evening. If you can join in, that would be great. I can see most of you have jumped in really, really well. I'm just going to give that a final moment before I close the poll here. So last little chance to get in your response, and I'm going to close that now. So I'll share those results with you. So really good, Kath. We've got lots of club safeguarding officers on tonight, 132. It seems to say, but it's great to see that we've got some coaches, team managers, committee members, a parent only, and we've got some ones who do other roles in rugby union on joining us tonight. So back over to you, Kath.
Lovely, thank you. So it really is great to see a variety of roles on the call tonight. And depending on your current role and the safeguarding training that you've already undertaken, you may be or may not be aware of the resources that we already provide to support you through safeguarding within rugby union. As said, this webinar supplements that information, and much of this can already be found on the England Rugby website. If you are a club safeguarding officer and you've not yet completed the In Touch course, please do register as soon as possible. We also welcome committee members on that course. We'll not be talking about signs of abuse tonight, as that's already covered in other safeguarding training. If you do need particular advice on a matter that you are currently facing in the club, then please do email us. We've got the safeguarding@rfu.com email at the bottom, rather than placing anything in chat tonight. Then we can have a more informed conversation. So if you look at the England Rugby website and the safeguarding pages, you will find all this information. This is a screenshot from those pages. So please do take a look and make yourself familiar with that. So we're going to go into our first lot of questions, Viv, if there's anything already in the Q&A.
Thanks, Kath. Just a couple of initial questions at this point. In terms of, we've been asked whether or not we'll provide a copy of the presentation. So we will, we will PDF the presentation. That's absolutely fine. And when we put the Q&As together as an additional document, you'll get a link through to the recording of the webinar, and we'll share the presentation and questions too. And just a couple of other questions that have come in. Someone said that we've mentioned other training. What training is available for club safeguarding officers and committee members? So thanks for that question, as Kath mentioned. So alongside Play It Safe, which is that 3-hour face-to-face training that we offer across the game, our In Touch course is held virtually and generally delivered by me, accompanied by another member of the safeguarding team. And although originally designed actually for club safeguarding officers, we've seen an increasing take up by committee members and others with organisational responsibility for safeguarding, and we'd really encourage this. So our In Touch course, all club safeguarding officers should attend that, and committee members are really encouraged to. So we hold courses at least once per month. With the next dates, I think we've got one next week, 26th of November. We've got one on the 11th of December and the 16th of January, I think, are the next two after that. And we'll be adding some more in as we go too. And one other question, is it okay for CSOs to make referrals to social services or to the police themselves, or does this need to come from the RFU? So Kath will be covering this a little bit later, but essentially yes, but we would ask that you let us know as soon as possible so that we could follow up with those agencies too. So that's, I think, all we have at the moment, Kath, but I'll keep an eye on questions as they come. Thanks.
Lovely, thanks, Viv. So why do we need to respond to safeguarding concerns? The why is relevant to all organisations, whether it be your rugby club, the RFU as the national governing body, an after-school activity, the school itself, a religious or charity organisation. You'll see that in that list we've got as to why we need to respond, we haven't yet mentioned the requirements of the RFU. Our policies and regulations reflect legislation already out there and the need to protect the vulnerable in our sport. So the legal requirements, we've got the Children's Act and we have the Care Act in relation to adults at risk, but also statutory guidance working together to safeguard children. That outlines organisations' obligations to act and safeguard the vulnerable in their organisation. We know that safeguarding is protecting people from abuse, neglect and exploitation. Prompt action ensures that rugby participants receive immediate help and protection. The risk of further harm is minimised. Perpetrators are identified and prevented from causing further harm. Early intervention can prevent safeguarding concerns from escalating. And later on, we will discuss poor practice or lower level concerns. An effective response by all organisations, including clubs, ensures that rugby is safe and accountable. It makes sure that our participants carry on through the game and we don't lose those very precious participants. It creates an environment where we can thrive, develop skills. Mental and social aspects of your club are important, and it enforces a culture where safety and well-being are prioritised. Failing to respond to safeguarding concerns, as we have heard in the press of late, can damage the reputation of organisations that leads to sometimes penalties. So proper safeguarding practices maintain credibility and compliance. So we do actually have another poll. So over to Alex.
I've launched that poll with you now. So this one's a bit of a question about reporting a concern. Can a person other than a club safeguarding officer or CB safeguarding manager report a concern to the RFU? What do you think the answer is? Is it no, only the club safeguarding officer or the CB safeguarding manager can report concerns? Is it yes, safeguarding is everybody's responsibility? only if the concern is a sexual abuse, or is it only when the person knows that the concern is true? So I can see you've thrown in your answers there. I'll give it a bit more time. There's just a few more people to answer. But please do join in. If you couldn't see it for any reason, just play it around at home, and if you can't see it for any reason, I'll keep talking them out loud if you can't see them. But just run at home. So I'm going to end that poll there and share the results. And without a doubt, Kath, 99% have answered yes, safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. I'll stop the share there and hand back to you.
Thank you, Alex. That's great. Absolutely. Safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. And that phrase or sentence is used extremely widely through various safeguarding and child protection documentation. So it is a collective responsibility of professionals and the public and us in the rugby community to ensure children's and adults at risk safety. If you are not the club safeguarding officer and you are aware of a matter that may be a safeguarding concern, please do speak to your club safeguarding officer. Their details should be readily available within the club on their website or within the clubhouse itself. And also the RFU safeguarding team can be contacted. Please do not delay in having that conversation or making that referral. Sharing the concern. A great quote used the other day by a coach reporting a safeguarding concern to their club safeguarding officer. He said he wanted to share the concern, not store the concern, which I think is really a quick and easy reference about how we should be managing safeguarding concerns. We know that we provide training in relation to recognising the signs of abuse, but we do also recognise that these signs are not always clear. And what we don't want you to do, it is not your responsibility to decide whether abuse or neglect has happened or is happening. It is your responsibility to share your concerns. Even when it's reported to us at the RFU safeguarding team, it is not always the case for us to decide whether harm has occurred. We will often make referrals to other agencies, and therefore it is their decision to decide whether abuse or harm or neglect is occurring. The rule of thumb is, if in doubt, seek early advice. That's what we do at the RFU. So please don't think that you don't need to do that as well. So, Regulation 21, I'm sure you're all aware of that. That defines the responsibility of safeguarding in rugby union. What we want to do, we want to get away from the term escalating it to the RFU. It's not. It's a requirement, and we at the RFU safeguarding team are here to provide advice, support, and decide the best route of management of safeguarding concerns. We're full-time members of staff with experience in safeguarding, both within and outside of sport, including police, probation, and social care. You can see that RFU Regulation 21 states that the RFU have jurisdiction in all safeguarding matters. So we are able to decide whether to refer on to another agency, manage an investigation, pass on to other RFU departments, including discipline, who we have an absolutely fantastic, excellent working relationship with, back to the constituent bodies, or delegate a matter back to a rugby club. Obviously, we always will provide support. We do recognise that clubs may worry that they lose control of a situation once they've referred it to the RFU. We would hope to alleviate those worries, but we do understand those concerns. We would aim to update you through communication and updates. The RFU have the same issue when we pass matters out to other agencies, where we are constantly seeking updates in order that we can provide the clubs with those updates. This is an important matter to recognise. There may be occasions when you believe a child or adult may be in immediate danger or at immediate risk of harm. If so, please call 999 as soon as possible. You will then make a report to the RFU safeguarding team. It is really important that you remember this, and you will never be criticised for calling the emergency services. Just to reassure you, though, that considering the number of referrals that we do receive at the RFU, the need to call 999 is rare. We do have further guidance on our website, on that screenshot that I showed you earlier, and one of the documents is when to involve the police. An example may be when you know that a child has been collected by a parent who is intoxicated and would appear to be unfit to drive. No one has been able to stop that parent, and they're currently driving out of the car park with their child and their teammate in the back of the car. Due to the alcohol and the intoxication, there is a likely risk to all in that car and other road users. That would be an appropriate time to call 999. Clubs have called 999 where there's been a physical assault on the pitch or the clubhouse. If that is the case, we would require the club to report to us the full details of the incident, including any police reference number, what actions the police may have taken if they attended, or any follow-up that has taken place that day. That then allows us to follow up with the police, any action they've taken, and whether we need to allow the police to carry on their investigation or they hand it over to us. So how do we recognise when an issue may be safeguarding? The list is not exhaustive. You need to be aware that safeguarding concerns can occur within the rugby setting, such as those in relation to the behaviour of a coach towards an age grade player or another child at the club, as well as concerns that have occurred away from sport, such as home, school, or in the wider community. That includes behaviour of an adult in their private life that indicates that they may pose a risk of harm to those in the rugby environment. For example, a coach who's in a position of trust having been arrested for harmful behaviour, whether that be towards a child or an adult, that may occur behind closed doors in their private life, for example, domestic abuse and also harmful sexual behaviours. You may receive a concern that a child is likely to be suffering neglect or harm at home. There may be an indication that a child is self-harming or possibly managing mental health or well-being issues. It's important to note that as regards mental health issues, you may be concerned about an adult. Although there are resources on the player welfare pages, if you require particular advice about an individual, then please do contact the safeguarding team. Adults or adults acting inappropriately towards a child, this includes their own parents. We do have common issues, sadly, when the relationship between parents has broken down and the child is used, and excuse the term, is being used as a pawn between the two parents. In the past, we've referred this to children's social care as emotional abuse, we believe, is occurring because of the behaviours of the parents. This is especially so when those behaviours are exhibited within the rugby environment, and it can be clearly seen that there is an impact on that child. Parents assaulting their child within the rugby setting, for example, slap across the head or abusive language towards their own child. A child acting inappropriately towards their peers or other children. This includes, excuse me, bullying or harmful sexual behaviour. A person in a position of trust being arrested for harmful behaviour, whether that be towards a child or an adult, and whether that be within sport or outside. Excuse me. So safeguarding isn't black and white. There's a continuum and often matters are not clear. However, there are circumstances which are clear that must be reported to the RFU. All this is in Regulation 21. Anyone cautioned of convicted of any offence, hopefully this is self-explanatory. If not, please do put some questions in the chat. anyone restricted from working with children by any other agency. This includes the Teacher Regulation Agency or another sports governing body. So, for example, teachers who are suspended from school or dismissed. Sorry about that. In addition, coaches who are involved in other sports, for example, cricket, and they've been suspended by the ECB. A first aider, maybe a police officer, and they've been suspended or dismissed. All these matters we need to be made aware of. So this regulation was put in place this year, so it's new for this season. And you need to be aware that regulations are updated every season. So this applies to any individual at your club who has been arrested or under investigation for an offence. Now, we're not just referring to coaches or those in a position of trust here. We're referring to, for example, first team player, club chair, president, or even an age grade player. This is about managing risk and supporting you as a club to manage risk. We can provide various aspects of support, including if the matter becomes in the public domain. So, Viv, an ideal time, and I am sorry for coughing and spluttering through that, but an ideal time now for any questions that we may have.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kath. And I'm conscious that some of the questions are coming through thick and fast. So for some of them, I will try to put them together where we've had similar questions. And for others, if we don't get to answer your question today, please don't think it's not important. We will put a Q&A document together. So really on actually kind of coming up to what you said towards the end there, Kath. So we've got a question here where it says that one of our senior players was convicted last year of indecent assault and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. He's just been released. Do we need to let you know or to do anything before he comes back to the club? So yes is the easy answer for that one. Please do let us know. I think it's really easy sometimes for us to think of safeguarding in rugby as really only involving those in positions of trust or when we're worried about children. But, you know, in this scenario, as you described, you know, we often think of rugby clubs being a family environment, even if they're adult only clubs. They're definitely child friendly environments, and we would want you to let us know so that we can make some inquiries, including contacting other agencies who might be able to provide us with information really around risk and any risk management measures that are needed. Sometimes risk can be managed and sometimes it can't. And so we need to seek the advice of agencies, and that could be probation, or even actually in the case of current police investigations, as Kath was mentioning earlier, where there's not yet been a conviction and where there's an investigation going on, we might need to contact the officer in charge of that investigation to see if there are any restrictions, and that could perhaps include bail conditions, which might make their attendance in rugby unsuitable. So if in doubt, please always come to us for advice. And we had another question really on a similar theme really to that, in relation to whether or not a club should report something to the RFU if something appears in the press, where that club wasn't necessarily aware of something. And again, I would say yes. So ordinarily, if we're aware of something involving one of your members or perhaps even one of your former members and it's come to us from another agency, we will let club safeguarding officers know and be working with you to manage risk if that still is apparent within the club. We might also put you in touch with the RFU comms team to assist in the case of any media or member inquiries, particularly when things are or will potentially be coming into the public domain. So please don't assume that we know, particularly if things involve former members. Do let us know. There have been a couple of questions that I've kind of popped together really about GDPR, so all on a similar theme, and this one kind of encapsulates things. So it can sometimes be difficult to know what might not be appropriate to report to you because of data protection or GDPR. and this person says they don't want to get into trouble by sharing something that they shouldn't. And that's a really great question, because I think we are really conscious that clubs can sometimes feel really anxious about sharing things with us. And I guess to reassure you, there is, both government and information commissioners' guidance that's really clear that data protection laws allow you to share information with us where there are safeguarding concerns. So that might be to prevent harm from happening, or to promote the welfare of children, or to help in identifying risk in order to prevent harm. So we need to think about things, obviously, about, we've still got a need to make sure the information that we've got is clear and is accurate, but please don't be frightened to share things with us. Sometimes it's appropriate to seek the consent of a parent to share information, but not if it places a child at further risk of harm. And you can always ask us for advice about this if we feel that actually you do need to have a conversation with a parent in relation to consent, because in our experience that, statutory agencies will ask that. If we're, for example, wanting to make a referral on to children's social care, we can absolutely talk you through that. And just to be clear, everyone that's involved within rugby, Regulation 21 highlights the need to share things with the RFU. So everyone is bound by our regulations. So I'm not sure if you mentioned this a little bit later, Kath, but I guess I'd want to say the important thing is to remember that we shouldn't ever promise to a child that we'll keep something secret. And that safeguarding a child is, ultimately is a clear and legitimate reason for sharing information, and data protection law doesn't prevent you from doing that. I probably would just want to say, where there are concerns in relation to an adult who may be at risk, we would advise you to seek some advice from us so that we can think about if consent is required. So often we do that in consultation with adult services, where we can seek their advice really about adults without identifying those adults in the first instance. Couple of other questions. So there was a question that came in relation to, I guess, that crossover between safeguarding and discipline. And we have got, I think Kath mentioned earlier, a really close working relationship with the RFU discipline team. And we'll discuss matters ultimately whether matters are best placed dealt with by safeguarding or by discipline. So, for example, we might have an on-pitch melee that might be best placed being dealt with via discipline, but there might be a crossover with us in terms of thinking around any concerns around the actions of someone in a position of trust, for example. So please feel free, again, if it comes through to us and we think it's more appropriately dealt with by discipline, then we will have conversations, and vice versa. As Kath said, we've got a really close relationship with them. I am going to hand back to you, and I can, as I've been talking, can see lots of other questions come in. So I'm going to start making some notes in relation to those, if that's okay, Kath.
Yeah, thank you, Viv. We're now going to talk about poor practice or lower level concerns, and I'm really conscious that this could be a webinar in itself. It may be one later at some point next year. Some of you who work in education may be aware of managing low level concerns, as it's documented in the guidance Keeping Children Safe in Education. For a number of years, sports referred to it as poor practice, and that's what it's commonly known as within sport. So what is poor practice or a lower level concern? Refers to the behaviour of an individual or person. They may be in a position of responsibility which falls below the usual standard that a club or the RFU require, and it should be covered in your club's code of conduct. It might be a minor issue or behaviour that doesn't meet the threshold for serious harm or abuse, but it does still raise questions about an individual's conduct, particularly in relation to children or adults at risk. The behaviours that come to your attention may not be immediately dangerous or intentionally harmful, but it is likely to set a poor example, and it does need to be responded to appropriately. Poor practice should be reported to the club safeguarding officer or the RFU, recorded and documented. they should be addressed appropriately, whether that be through support and training or words of advice. Poor practice or lower level concerns need to be dealt with effectively. Patterns of concerning behaviour need to be identified and monitored. If they're not addressed effectively, then the behaviour may persist and may result in harm. So what type of things are we talking about when we refer to poor practice or lower level concerns? Usually very minor boundary breaches, for example, inappropriate jokes or language that isn't harmful but could be perceived as unprofessional, failure to follow a particular safeguarding procedure, for example, entering changing rooms, a coach who speaks abruptly to children, a coach who smokes or vapes around children, the shouty or sweary coach, allowing children to use inappropriate language unchallenged. But it also includes that touchline behaviour by coaches, parents, other players and spectators. Again, the list is not exhaustive. However, responding to poor practice does help in creating a culture of openness and trust. It ensures that all adults in your club are consistently modelling your code of practice and also the core values, which all helps to keep children and adults safe. Without being addressed, it can lead to harmful behaviour. And it is important to note that adults who intentionally harm children often have a history of crossing boundaries and breaking rules. And that is often evident in serious case reviews. So I'm sure there's probably some further questions, Viv, about low-level concerns or any other matters. So fire away.
I knew I was going to do that at least once today, where I began talking with my mic not on. Absolutely, we've got a fair few questions, Kath, that have come in, so I will just try to address those if that's okay. So we were asked, if we deal with something that is poor practice, do we still need to report that to the RFU? And I'd suggest yes. So reporting it means that we can keep a record for you. So I'm always conscious that poor practice issue in isolation might not need anything further from us. But later, if there are further concerns, it could build a picture, I guess, in relation to the actions of an individual. It can also be really helpful for you to be able to go back, for example, if another member has made a complaint, to let them know that you've reported it to the RFU and that we've supported your approach. We would almost always, where there are poor practice concerns, support an education first approach. So it's not that we want to become involved unnecessarily in what can be managed in relation to a club matter. But we've had another question around, as well, around kind of storing and recording poor practice concerns. And it is important that poor practice concerns are recorded. And for some clubs, they might have a secure file or platform that they're able to use, but for others, we know this is difficult. So we've changed some of the ways that we're recording things at the moment within the RFU so that we can store it for you, even if we're not involved in any investigation. So it might purely be a club matter, but it's absolutely fine. And we'd encourage you to report that through to us so that we can store that record for you. We've had another question about kind of dealing with concerns. So what happens if we're dealing with a coach where there are concerns regarding poor practice and they resign from their role or leave the club before they've completed the process? We would always advise you to complete the process. So the person might not want to take part in person. They might want to kind of, write down their representations or present something in another way or not be involved in a process at all. But having an outcome is important. So that helps you, I think, as a club, show that you've addressed matters. But it also helps the coach, actually, in the circumstance it's described in terms of being a coach, so that there's a conclusion, and that helps them as well in terms of things not being necessarily raised later. The same is true for more serious safeguarding allegations. The process must be concluded so that we know what action would have been taken had the person not resigned from their role, if that makes sense. And a couple of questions that we've had about whether or not we've got a format for recording lower level concerns or poor practice concerns so that clubs can keep a record themselves. We don't have a suggested format at the moment, but actually that's not a bad idea, and that's something that we'll take away if you clubs would find that useful, and pop that on our resources. So we'll have a look at that. But a couple of questions as well, particularly around the poor practice, Kath, around kind of whether or not things need to come to the RFU safeguarding team, or whether or not it's okay for clubs to get advice from their CB safeguarding manager. And I would say often it is absolutely okay to get some advice from your CB safeguarding manager, but we are really conscious that our CB safeguarding managers are brilliant, and they're great in terms of doing all of those proactive things that we really want to do with clubs. But CB safeguarding managers are volunteers too, and they may not be able to get back to you as quickly as the safeguarding team centrally at the RFU can. So whilst it's absolutely always okay to seek advice from CB safeguarding managers, we would encourage you to seek advice from us, particularly where things are on the cusp. So where you are wondering whether or not something needs a referral, probably a good idea for that to come straight through to the safeguarding team, and then we can provide some more immediate advice. We've got more questions coming through, Kath, so I'm going to have a look through those whilst you're moving on to the next slide. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I think we will be definitely doing a Q&A document to circulate after this. Okay, so responding. So we do have a guidance sheet, further details on the website, as I showed you earlier, of sharing concerns. What I would say is that if you are a club safeguarding officer, it is very rare, and bearing in mind the number of referrals that we do receive, that a child will seek you, the club safeguarding officer, directly to tell you about something that's worrying them, but they may speak to their coach or team manager. The majority of times, the concern that comes to the coach, team manager, or the club safeguarding officer has been provided by an adult or another agency. However, regardless who is telling you about concern or worry, you should still follow these principles. So it's really important to stay calm and focused. If you appear shocked, or as if you don't believe them, then the person providing the concern may stop talking and retract. That includes a parent making a concern to you. Listen carefully, offer immediate support and reassurance. Don't interrupt them. Remember what the person is saying in their own words, and take the concern seriously. Accept what they are saying and reassure them that you are taking this matter seriously. Don't jump to judgment. Avoid judgment. Don't jump to conclusions. Listen carefully and keep an open mind. You shouldn't make a decision whether abuse has taken place or not. We discussed that earlier. And you shouldn't express your views or feelings about the concerns. If you are asking questions, do not ask leading questions, and don't interrupt when they are talking to you about their concern. Allow the person to finish anything they have to say so they can explain to you the information in their own way. And you do have to have patience during this process. I said about asking questions, there may be some need to clarify facts, and we're going to come on to that very shortly. Make a factual account of the conversation that you're having. Use the person's actual words. Save the email or report that they provided to you and provide that to the RFU in your referral. Make sure that you keep a sufficient record, and the record should include the date, time, the place of the conversation, and the essence of what was said, what was done by whom and in whose presence. Try to use language as much as possible that the referrer is telling you, and try and take notes once they finish talking to you. They want to have your full attention. The RFU safeguarding referral form offers prompts regarding appropriate information to record. So please do take a look at that after this webinar. Viv spoke about confidentiality earlier. Advise them that it will be shared with the RFU safeguarding team because that you are following policy and procedures. And sometimes you do have to tell people, and we do as well, that if they don't want the information shared, that or their details, then there are potential consequences of not sharing it because we might not be able to investigate the matter fully. And don't promise confidentiality, as Viv says. You have a duty to support and report. And this also includes not making promises about confidentiality if you're contacted by other agencies, and that includes the police, social care, or the local authority designated officer. If you are contacted by those agencies, you must report that matter to us. Explain to the person sharing the concern with you what you're going to do next, that you have to pass the information on. And you may at times have to consider referral yourself. Dependent on the nature of the matter and the urgency, you might need to make a referral to the police or dial 999 as we described earlier, or you might need to make a referral to out of hours children's services. It is always wise to source the information of the contact of out of hours children's services, so you always have it to hand just in case it's ever needed. And again, I want to reassure you that those circumstances are rare when we look at the number of referrals that we receive at the RFU. Excuse me. When deciding to involve the police or social care, clubs should always ensure that they put the needs of the child before anything else. You should refrain from trying to deal with the incident in-house, especially when clubs are unsure if a crime or abuse has occurred. The most important thing is to seek advice from an early stage if you are not clear or not sure. And that includes open and prompt communication with the RFU safeguarding team and potentially other agencies like the police or social care. It is vital that any club safeguarding officer or club member who feels that a particular incident needs to be reported to the police or social care always makes contact with the RFU safeguarding team after. I think we're going into a poll next. So we shall hand over to Alex.
So this is the last poll for this evening, and it's what should you do poll. If you can't see it for any reason, I'm going to give you the question and answers now, so you can play it at home. Someone has shared a concern with you. You are unsure whether the situation qualifies as a safeguarding concern. What should you do? Ignore it until you have further evidence. Contact the RFU safeguarding team or the CB safeguarding manager for further advice. Start an investigation to gather evidence, or discuss it at a committee meeting. What should you do? There you go. I'll just go through those again. Got a few more people to respond. Ignore it until you have further evidence. Contact the RFU safeguarding team or CB safeguarding manager for further advice. Start an investigation to gather evidence, or discuss it at a committee meeting. Last chance to get your answers in. I'm going to close that poll now. And I'll share those results with you. So 96% CAF said contact the RFU safeguarding team, with just 4% saying start an investigation to gather evidence there. So back over to you.
Lovely, thank you, Alex. Yeah, that's 96 or 98%, 96% contact the RFU safeguarding team or CB safeguarding manager. Absolutely, the right answer. And I'm just going to kind of come on now to clarification of facts, which people might get confused with about it being an investigation. So I note like the 4% that came up on that poll. So when a concern is raised to you, you should not immediately embark on an internal investigation. Okay. There is no need initially to gather statements or interview anyone. However, you will need to gather sufficient information to enable us to understand what the nature of the concern is. We do recognise that a number of incidents that occur during a fixture, for example, a melee on the pitch with the under-15s or under-16s on a Sunday morning, that's reported into us on the Monday, and we receive various accounts from parents, spectators with the initial submission. And we do understand that you do that whilst it's fresh in people's minds. However, it's not a matter of course. You need to be aware that if other agencies do become involved, then those initial statements and accounts will be forwarded or will be shared with those agencies. But there are going to be some occasions that the information presented to you requires some further questions as regards the context, the content of the allegation, clarifying some terminology, what actions has already been taken, or what further support may be required. That is not an investigation. It's the clarification of facts that means there's sufficient information in that initial referral for the RFU to complete the triage process and decide what should happen next. We are then able to clearly understand the nature of the concern. And as a rule of thumb, you should be able to tell us what has happened, where it happened, when did it happen, who is involved, who did what, and possibly why it happened. In addition, what support may be required for individuals involved. We can then consider what action needs to be taken, what other agencies or what other RFU departments may need to be involved. So I'll just kind of give you a couple of examples. A parent informs you that their 14-year-old child has received an inappropriate image on the players' WhatsApp group. So what do they mean by inappropriate? You can ask that question. Don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions. For example, in this scenario, has the parent seen that image? If yes, can they describe it to you? What is inappropriate about it? Is it a racial or homophobic abuse? Is it adult pornography? Is it a meme that's not palatable? Or is it child sexual abuse imagery? If it is child sexual abuse imagery, has the parent reported the matter to the police? If they've reported the matter to the police, what is the police referral instant number and what contact have they received from the police as yet? Never, and I reiterate, never ask for any inappropriate image to be forwarded to you, and never ask a child to describe an inappropriate image. Second example, an under 10 parent reports to the coach that their estranged partner attended the house on the Saturday night. There was an altercation which resulted in the reporting parent being pushed and shouted at, and this was all witnessed by the child. They tell you as a result of what happened last night, the child may be subdued at training. So don't be afraid to ask some clarifying questions of that parent. We need to remember that the welfare of that child is paramount. Does the child need any further support, or does that parent need any further support? Were police called? Did they attend? Are children's social care aware? Would you like us to seek some further support? Do you give consent? Has the parent shared, or are they going to share the incident with the school so the school can safeguard and assist that child? The likelihood is that if you don't clarify these situations, we are going to ask you to do that. It is better coming from yourselves than the RFU, National Governing Body, phoning a parent out of the blue. So sometimes we do request you to go back and clarify these facts of the allegation. And as we've said previously, depending on what you've been told or witnessed, you may need to make contact with the relevant agencies yourself. We don't expect that as a matter of course, but we do recognise that some of you have a safeguarding background and have done that and reported the concern to us soon after. So reporting, I've already mentioned we need to know what, who, where and when. So I do advise that you look at the RFU safeguarding reporting form. There are crib notes on that form that explain the information that we require. Our preference would be that you use that referral form. Those crib notes will remind you of the information needed. And also, we are currently developing a web-based form that will feed immediately into our case management system, and we do hope that that will go live early in the new year. We cover 1,800 clubs throughout England, so we don't know every individual in club. And if we need to make onward referrals, we need the correct information. If you can include RFU IDs, that would be great. Make sure that we can source the right person on GMS. If possible, include details of school, date of birth, home address, and if it's concerning the behaviour of an adult, an understanding of what they do for their employment or whether they volunteer or work with children elsewhere. It might be necessary that you provide supplementary information that includes the VEO link, if this is in relation to matters on the field of play, copies of WhatsApp or text messages, copies of emails that have been forwarded to you by the parent reporting. But all this needs to be balanced in submitting this information to us in a timely manner. What we do ask is that please avoid sending in email attachments with trails of emails that we have to wade through. This is really difficult for us to manage, especially on a Monday or Tuesday morning when those referrals are coming in through the safeguarding inbox. We may miss a vital part of information that may change or dictate our course of action. So the what? What is the concern? How has it been reported to you? We need to be quite clear because we don't want to make assumptions. Who is the person raising the concern to you? Who is the concern about? Who may have caused the harm? When did the incident occur? And when was the concern raised to you? Where was the location of the concern? And any other information that you may think is necessary, any immediate risks that were mitigated, any action taken by the club, i.e. we've stood the coach down, or any other agencies that may be involved. So just to summarise, report the facts that have been provided to you. Don't provide your opinion. If you've witnessed something, make sure that you detail what you've witnessed and not hearsay or assumption. Provide the direct email or the report that the parent may have provided to you. And we do advise, please don't copy in other club members or committee members when you provide that safeguarding referral to us. You can copy in your CB safeguarding manager because they're part of the safeguarding process. And if you are unsure, contact the RFU safeguarding team. We've mentioned that a number of times this evening. So that's either on the safeguarding@rfu.com email address or that telephone line. It is unmanned, but if you leave a message, one of the team will get back to you. We do ask that all new referrals or requests for contact come in through that safeguarding inbox. That is monitored every day. I know that many of you might have your favourite case officers or case managers, but please, if it's a new referral, make sure it goes into that inbox. If a member of the safeguarding team is on leave or on holiday, then that safeguarding inbox is always monitored. We also request that please avoid text messaging us individual staff members or sending us WhatsApp. If we're on holiday, we don't take our work phone with us, so you're not going to get a response. And what I would say, if that the matter is not serious and you've reported it into us, then we always will respond within 1 working day. That is our aim. You will get an auto response from the out of office reply from the safeguarding inbox, but we will always aim to respond or acknowledge you either directly by myself or one of the case officers that we've received your referral. Rule of thumb: if you are torn whether you need to report a concern or a complaint, it usually means that you need to report it. So never hesitate in that regard. So we're heading into our last lot of questions now, Viv. So I'm sure, I can see you've got actually quite a few. So I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Kath. In the last couple of minutes, I don't want to do any of the questions an injustice. What I would say is that if anyone has asked a question that can't wait for a response, in other words, when we pop the Q&As together, please use that safeguarding@rfu.com email address, and we will try to answer your question a bit quicker. Otherwise, we will answer all of your questions. Some of them we might pop together. There are lots of questions around kind of managing poor practice concerns through codes of conduct. Lots of questions about how to raise concerns if there are concerns that you have in relation to other clubs. So when you visit clubs, and how best to raise those concerns. So we will answer those individually, or we might pull some, as I say, pull some of those together as well as some of the other questions that we've got in there. But please, if you're asking a question and you need a more immediate response, then can wait a week or so for the Q&As to be drawn together, then please do pop us an email at safeguarding@rfu.com. But I'm conscious that we said that we would be an hour, and we are just coming up to that now. So I will hand back over to Kath in a second, but just wanted to say thank you. It's been great to see so many of you here today. I hope it's been helpful. There are definitely some things that have come through the chat that will give me some pause for thought about how we can improve our process, and think around the information that we share, and perhaps thinking around updating some of our courses and things. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to Kath to say thank you too.
Thank you. Really appreciate you joining us tonight, and I hope that you've got some useful takeaways. But the key messages tonight are: do not delay reporting a concern. If in doubt, give us a shout. Share, not store, and refer to Regulation 21. So safeguarding@rfu.com is the inbox for any concerns, referrals or queries. And then that telephone number is the unmanned line, which you leave a message and one of the team will get back to you. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. And we've come to the end of the webinar, and we will be hopefully sharing those Q&As at some point next week. Thank you, everyone. Good night.